All right, here we go. India. I'm going to do India and Japan today. And these are two units that will cover a great length of time, but there are some gaps in the middle. Can everybody see that? Should I shut out the light or?
That's good. Right, lights off. Yeah, that was.
All right, there we go. All right. India has this very intense, unique geography. When we talk about India and the subcontinent, we're talking about all of South Asia, which is just more than India. It's Bangladesh, Pakistan, it's Myanmar. And if you look at this whole area, the subcontinent jutting out from the bottom of mainland Asia is enormous. And 3 of the world's most 10 populated countries are in this area. So it's extremely population dense. You've got Pakistan, you've got India, and you've got Bangladesh. And close by is China, which is heavily populated along the east coast. A good comparison to the Chinese east coast is the east coast of the United States, where all the big cities are. This is a very population dense area. And in the middle here, in this tan part, is the large Deccan Plateau. It is a giant desert. Not very many people live there. So everyone is going to be along the coastlines, the eastern and western Ghats, or right up along the high mountains, the Himalayan plateau. Sir?
So you see in China where there's this like dotted line
Dotted line.
through the like plateau, the desert, right there?
Yes.
Is that like a trading route?
That would be going out to the Jade Gate. That would be part of the Silk Road, yes.
Cool.
Yes.
That's
All
pretty
right,
cool.
there we go, yeah. Wow. So India's geography. Here we have the Ghats, the Great Deccan Plateau, and over here to the left we've got the Hindu Kush Mountains, very tall and formidable. And going back to these river valley times, this is an area, what's going on?
Nothing.
You guys are like doing weird
Just
signals.
looking at them view.
I stare at him frequently.
He's an attractive young man.
He really is. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, so as are you, Cameron. We don't want to leave you out. So yes, all
That
right.
is the first. He's just
Alright.
saying. He's just saying that. He's just saying that.
The Hindu Kush Mountains are a barrier to the east. Going back to River Valley civilization, India, it is one of the things that keeps them isolated. Very similar to Egypt because it was very difficult to get there. Remember, Mesopotamia is wide open and flat. Anybody's coming through there. To the northern part of India, way up here, are the massive Himalayan mountains, the tallest mountain chains, not underneath the ocean chain, in the entire world. So to the west and to the north, India is protected, and down in the bottom we've got the giant Indian Ocean. So they're going to be free from outside invaders for many, many, many years. So up north here in this darker greenish area, it's this area. It is the northern plains of India. This is where a lot of the food is going to be grown. It is one of the population dense areas. It is also going to be the place in a few minutes where the Aryan invaders are going to land when they get to India. Because remember, India is the one river valley civilization that was not founded once, but twice. And when we get to Tamerlane, when he comes in the Mughal dynasty, this is going to be their heartland. To give you a comparison of this, if you've ever been to the Rocky Mountains and you look eastward onto the Great Plains, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, that is like standing in these mountains looking at this area. Down here is the coastlines, the tropical coastlines. Think of being along the Florida coast. Most people, however, are going to concentrate over here along the Great Indus River in what is today modern-day Pakistan. And this looks like you're out in the middle of the Arizona desert somewhere. Well, it looks similar because that's all that's here. So anyway, the Indus and the Ganges, the two mother rivers. The Ganges running up here, up north along the northern plain, and down here is the Indus. In the dry season, all right, they're still flowing, but the banks, are very visible. The water is very shallow. These are the sacred mother rivers who give life to India. When they flood, they get very high. And everybody, if you can see this picture of modern day India, has to live right close to the ocean shore or the river's edge because of their dependency on water. India is the one civilization that is not dependent upon a river flooding. Instead, they are dependent upon the monsoons. Monsoon is a seasonal wind, a wind that changes with the season. If you've seen the outstanding movie Forrest Gump, most people associate the monsoons with a heavy downpour, and then one day somebody turned on the rain and it rained big drops and fat drops and sideways drops. And that's true. Part of it is a monsoon. When I taught in Korea, for a month, I was never dry. I was always damp because it's going to rain. That's only part of it. That is in the spring and summer of the year. In October, the wind direction is going to switch. Here comes the monsoons in the spring, this time of year, dumping rain across India. In October, it switches. It comes off of the Gobi Desert, Siberian plain, and it's like turning a hot air dryer, a blow dryer, on all of India. So in the same town, you have this during the monsoon season, and you also have this. This is a roadway and a bridge. Well, in the dry season, to get water and moisture, crops graze down there. 6 months later, you're up to your waist in water. Problem with the monsoons is it made it very, very difficult for the people with their agriculture. If you plant too early, the monsoons come and they wash all of your crops away. If you plant too late, they may not get enough moisture and they will dry up. Which makes what happens next so very interesting and cool. Around 2500 BC, a little bit later than Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, River Valley, India gets started because the people have got to migrate a much farther distance. They settle along the Indus River in the twin cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. And you might remember this, so this is the birth of civilization. The cities are intricate examples of monumental architecture, like the Egyptian pyramids, like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, is that they were completely identical. The cities were about 120 miles apart. So to put that into perspective, we are in Harappa, Chapel Hill. We go down I-40 to Charlotte, and that is Mohenjo-Daro. That is the distance they were apart, but they are near duplicate carbon copies of each other. Harappa is a little bit bigger. So this tells us that in ancient India, in the ancient river valley, there's a great knowledge of mathematics, there is a strong central authority, and there's complex organization to organize the people and the labor. For not one big building, like the Pyramid of Khufu, we're building two. These cities were laid out in a grid plan. Everything was put in blocks, north, south, east, and west. And they had a very intricate sewer system to drain runoff water and wastewater down below through sand and gravel to cleanse it, an old school septic system. We don't see a sewer drain this advanced until Rome several thousand years later. The civilization also had uniform weights and measures with different currency. Think like nickel, dime, quarter, 50-cent piece or dollar bill, or 20, 10, 5, 1, and a nickel. Everything was uniform, measured out, and precise. And then all of a sudden, around 1500 BC, for reasons we're not sure, both these two advanced cities just disappeared. We do not know what happened, as there was no writing system. As you can see, structures are still there, sewer systems still there, tools are still there, but no human or animal remains exist anywhere. So we don't know really what happened. And that's the way India is going to set for a while. Their money is kind of cool. A lot of people freak out, oh, why they got a swastika on their money? Well, in India and in Hinduism, that is the Hindu symbol for peace. And they put animals on their money. The larger the animal, like the elephant, was worth a lot more money. So if there was a coin with me on it, since I'm so fat, I would be worth a lot of money. Yeah, exactly.
That's a joke. Oh my God.
It's all right. Now, way up in southern Russia, there are people. And they're like, you know what is not good here? We are going to live in southern Russia. Buja vista, let's go. Das Vidanya, motherland. And they leave. They're thinking, man, it's got to be better than where we are in Russia. And they start wandering, and they get down into, you know, Eastern Turkey, and they're like, it's not much better. Should we go home? No, let's keep going. Then they get to Iraq, and they're like, dear God, this is even worse than southern Russia. It's a giant desert. What are we doing here? Then they keep going. They get into Iran, and they're like, oh my God. Iraq was a giant desert. Now we're on a mountain plateau in Iran, and it's really cold. It's hot. It's cold. Man, this is terrible. What are we doing? Maybe Russia was better. Then they keep going. They get into Afghanistan, and they're like, we didn't know it, but it's actually worse here than it was back in Iraq. Should we go home? Well, we've come this far now. We must keep going. Maybe get better. Yes. By this time, they're losing their Russian accent. Finally, they get into Pakistan, and they're like, oh my God, look at this. There's a big giant river and a big giant green field, that northern part of India. And these are the Aryans, not Nazi Aryans, but a group of Indo-Europeans who are going to move into India. They were shepherds. They were looking for grazing lands for their sheep, for their goats, and their cattle.
So they brought their sheep and cattle
all that way. That's a long way.
How long did that take?
Several hundred years. That's a long time. Because they didn't do it in like, 2 or 3 years. Yeah, this takes a long time. When they get there, they're like, man, look at this beautiful country, and there's, hello, is anybody here? And it echoes, here, 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 here. They're like, man, let's just stay here. And they do. And so the Aryans will assimilate the few natives left, called Dravidians, and start the second founding of India. Very strangely, those that follow the Indus River see the twin cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, but they don't go in. And that's weird, because if there was a beautiful city that was uninhabited, why would you not? Like, I'll take that house. That one's mine. They do not. There was some weird stuff going on.
Ghosts.
Could be.
Yeah, some weird juju.
Weird juju. The Aryans are led by a war leader known as a Raja. Think of Jasmine's tiger in Aladdin, very fierce warrior. Well, Rajas were needed to protect the tribes as they migrated from southern Russia through Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into India. And so India is going to be opposite all other ancient river valley civilizations. Normally a priest king is in charge, and they are usurped by warrior males to protect the civilization. India is going to be the opposite. Rajas were in charge until they got to India, and once they got there, there was
no war.
There was nobody to fight, so priest kings will take over, and warrior males will fall into the second tier. And this is where what we think of as traditional Indian and Hindu culture is going to take shape. One of the things to make Alexander happy is that Aryans measured their worth in number of cattle. So did they bring their cows all the way over? So as Alex is looking over there at Jesse, he's like, wow, Jesse, you are probably a maybe 50 or 60 cowgirl at worst. The richer you were, the more cows you have. So if you're a dairy farmer, you're rich. But in order for your daughter to get married, you would have to give some of your cattle to the new husband to show your wealth or your worth. So sorry, Jesse, Dad thinks that you're only worth 20 cattle. You've got to hope that Alexander accepts that. Good thing Roxanne's not here, or we would be in a whole bunch of trouble. So anyway, by 500 BC, India is made up of these different kingdoms. Now the Aryans, you two stop it, that Indians will break apart, and one of the things that makes India difficult all the way up to 1948, India-Pakistan split, is its size. If a branch hangs out up here and settles, and another group goes down here, another group goes over here, and people go way down here so they could, be warm and sunny all the time, all right? You're never going to go and contact anybody else. India is so big, the terrain is so diverse. Once you settle, the likelihood is you are not moving again. So India throughout history is very difficult to unify because there are just so great of a distance. So there's different languages, different religions, so on and so forth. And the Aryans will bring with them an oral religion for years. And it was eventually written down into 4 books called the Vedas, which are a collection of hymns, prayers, and rituals. It was the practice of the Aryan religion. After being passed down orally for centuries, the Vedas will be written down into 4 religious books, the most important of which is the Rig Veda. So put this into context. This is the Old Testament of the story of the Hebrews, the Old and New Testament, the Christian Bible, the Islamic Quran. In Hinduism, it would be the Vedas, the most important of which is book number 4, the Rig Veda.
Why is it the most important?
Great questions. Cameron, we're going to answer that right now. By reading the Rig Veda, we get an insight into culture. We get an insight into what the Aryans' belief system was that will found what we know today as Hinduism. So it's an insight into what they were doing back in those days. And in the Rig Veda, it describes the social hierarchical system that we know as the caste system, where there are several main castes and hundreds of subsects. The most important will be the priest, known as a Brahmin. Now, a Brahmin is the priest. Remember, Brahman in Hinduism is the unseen spiritual being that connects the whole universe together.
So there's an I and an A.
There's an I and an A. I is the priest. The A is, the analogy I gave you guys is it's the Force from Star Wars, all right? Every living thing's binding energy that connects the universe together. Social class number 2 is a Kshatriya. These are the warriors, all right? You still need protection from outside groups, wild animals, so on and so forth. The Brahmins and the Kshatriyas are the minority of the population. As we will see in social class systems throughout history, most of the poor people, everyone from a herder to an artisan to a merchant to a farmer, is known as a Vaya. Yes, sir?
Could you say that the Kshatriyas are kind of like the samurai because they're like...
Yes, yes. Samurai, medieval knights, yes. They're that warrior class between the peasants and the royal authority. Yes, very good. This is just about everybody in the society. It was nearly impossible for you to raise your social class. Where you were locked in. On the very bottom are known as the Shudras. You guys probably know them as the untouchables, which is what the lowest class of a Shudra is. These are the guys who do the dirty jobs. They butcher animals. They take care of dead bodies. They do the heavy, nasty labor that nobody else really wants to do, like that. So, anyway, all right. Yes, sir.
Back in southern Russia, is it known if the Aryans have the caste system there?
It is not. It is not. So, this area, when the Aryans get to India, is known as the Vedic Age. It is a 1,000-year period that will go from 1500 to 500 BC. Good way to understand that is the Vedic Age will end right about what is known as the classical world. The classical world is like Greece, Rome, Han Dynasty, from like 400 BC to 400 AD. So that's where the Vedic civilization ends. In India, very similar to what will happen in Korea, we'll see shortly, very similar to what happens in China and Japan time and time again, there's that era of warfare, like the era of warring states, when the different Rajas will fight for supremacy. In 322 BC starts the great Melega dynasty. It will run simultaneous with ancient Greece, when, Socrates and Plato and Pericles and the Peloponnesian Wars. Down in India, the Melega dynasty is just rolling. And the main leader is a guy named Chandragupta Maurya. He unifies India, and Ms. Rajan always just crushes me because I cannot say this word. He builds the city of Pataliputra. All right. It is the Athens of India. It is that great, massive world capital full of art and, culture. He had an elite bodyguard, leaving out of 400 women soldiers because he said women are more loyal than are men. So he builds this great city of art, culture, and learning. He has a almost Qing dynasty-like ruling system. It was very harsh. Punishments were swift and severe. But much like Shi Huangdi, he said he needed it to bring order. He was stabilizing an empire that had been at war for a very, very long time, and it works. The dynasty is mostly known for a guy named Ashoka. And Ashoka is going to be one of the guys who will put these pillars. And on a pillar is 4 lion heads pointing north, east, south, and west. And it was said when you come inside those pillars, you will be guaranteed honest, good, and just government. Ashoka was a warrior. And legend has it that there was this massive, gigantic battle, and when it was done, there were 100,000 dead soldiers. And Ashoka climbs to the top of this hill, and he looks out, and he's like, my God, what have I done? And he converts to the new religion of Buddhism at this time. And he becomes peaceful from that moment on. Ashoka is kind of a neat guy because coming into the Indus River Valley was Alexander the Great. Now, their armies never did meet, but if Alexander would have kept going, he would have ran right smack dab into Ashoka, and that would have been one heck of a battle.
Who would have won?
Home turf, I think Alexander was undefeated, but Ashoka was on home ground. So you always want to give the home court advantage. So now, he will eventually connect the Indian spice trade route to the Silk Road of China. After his death, the Silk Road will run through India and connect all the way to ancient Greece. So while he's a warrior, He converts to the new religion of Buddhism and is very important in connecting the trade routes of the ancient Silk Road. All right, you guys with me? Shortly after him, whoa, the Mughal dynasty, how did that get there? All right, I was getting a little bit carried away. Is the great Gupta dynasty, the next great dynasty in Indian history. It will run about the same time as ancient Rome and the Han dynasty. 320 to 500 BC. And this is one of India's great golden ages. Yes, sir.
Is it so? The Maurya dynasty started in 320 BC.
Oh, this is AD. I am so sorry. I was correct. Whoa. Yes, that is going to be ancient Rome. All right. 320. As the Maurya dynasty ends, the Gupta dynasty picks up. This is what you get for doing
Will
this.
dates be important?
No. No. Dates are really not good. As long as you kind of know. That's why Maurya, Greece, Gupta, Rome. That's the easy way to line them up. All right. And it's the bridge between BC and AD, just like Rome. So I was right. Rome, Han Dynasty. My bad. You ever do these things? I don't know. When you guys do presentations, is your mind always ahead of what you're saying?
Yes, all the
So
time.
I thought of this 2 minutes ago, and I'm thinking of what's coming next. So great to slow me down there. All right. So you guys straight?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It is during this time, during the heyday of ancient Rome. Again, when most people are taught about Rome, you focus on Rome. Nobody talks about India and or China. Well, down in India, we're coming up with the concept of the zero and the decimal point. You know, tenths, hundreds, thousandths, and all of that stuff. And India becomes extremely medically advanced at this time. India and China's medicinal capabilities outstrip those of just about everybody else in the world at the time. Science, medicine, prescriptions for what causes an ailment. This will cure this. This will alleviate back pain when no one else really had it. And somehow these got all mixed up. So now India is going to exist that way for hundreds of years. It's just going to stay steady. It's going to be very important for trading, going on up through the heyday of ancient Rome, the Byzantine Empire. India is rich in spices, in precious gems, and it's going to be a facilitator of trade. Vasco da Gama in the 1500s is going to be the first European to sail over there. And so India is known as a large trading facility. But it is after Genghis Khan's Mongol horde goes from China over to the Middle East and Eastern Europe and Tamerlane, the Islamic warrior Tamerlane, that India is going to re-emerge. Where are we here? Oh, I am here. All right. And we're going to get the Mughal dynasty. She's going to be founded around the northern city of Delhi. It's going to be called the Delhi Sultanate. It will be one of the different caliphates in Indian history at this time. Its most famous legendary leader during the age of absolutism is Akbar the Great. Now, he was a warrior who aggressively expanded the borders of India, but he is most known for his great leadership ability, where he led through religious tolerance. He got Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Hebrews, Muslims to sit down together and said, let's look more at what unites us than at what divides us. So he unifies and strengthens a lot of India. His descendants were a bunch of buffoons. They didn't have his personality, so he's once again akin to Peter the Great or Louis XIV. You have these great, enormous, charismatic leaders for a short time, and when they die, the whole system falls apart. His descendants will take money from the British East India Company, who asks to build ports on India's coast to take part in the trading, and the British will little by little encourage the Indian factions to fight, and they will gobble up new territory. Islam will be highly prevalent because when the conqueror Tamerlane comes in, he leaves that wake of pestilence, death, and destruction. And it is the mellow Muslims, the Sufis, who come in and they repair a lot of that damage. Oh man, Buddhism, I like that idea of, the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. That sounds a lot like what Allah says. So they were able to blend and morph local religious traditions and further institute Islam into India. And it's at this time that doctors in India had to begin to take a medical exam. You are not allowed to practice medicine until you pass their exam, one of the first groups of people in the world to do so. So here we have Akbar the Great. These are his different religious people hanging out. This is the one-time richest man in the world, known as Shah Jahan. He blows India's wealth, building the Taj Mahal and making deals with the British. And he goes from being the richest man in the world to broke and poor. So anyway. Next big thing besides the gunpowder civilization of the Mughals is imperialism in India, where India is going to come on the radar for being rich in industrial goods. We know about the transatlantic trade in the New World. When we get to imperialism and the Industrial Revolution, Asia becomes all the rage again. India, like maple sap running from maple trees, has rubber trees, an essential industrial material, almost as important as iron and steel. So in the age of imperialism, we're going to head back to ancient India. And it's the British East India Company that is going to set up trading outposts in the large Indian cities. The Mughal Empire was near collapsing. The British fill the power vacuum. So by 1800, they controlled most of the profitable parts of the country. The only thing they really didn't have complete control over is the Deccan Plateau, and you know what? There's nothing there anyway, so we don't care.
Why is there like a little red dot in the middle of it?
Here,
No, in the middle of the plateau.
because they will build a train out here to go from coast to coast. Yes, ma'am.
Aren't all three of those trading posts like companies now? Calcutta's a
Yes, yeah, the Bombay Company, it comes from
all of it.
all of this, exactly. All right. Now, to help police their territory, the British got together a group of people, Indian soldiers known as sepoys, Indian soldiers who were told they would never, ever, ever have to leave India. It was against their religion. Well, the British, and all of their wisdom, this is the time when the British have the empire on which the sun has never set. So they believe that if they need soldiers, they're going to take them from India, and it's going to kick off what is known as the Great Sepoy Rebellion over paper bullet cartridges coated in beef tallow or pork fat, which was against the religion of both Hindus and Muslims. When around 100 or so sepoys refuse, the British treat them terribly and they're imprisoned, kicking off what is known as the Great Sepoy Rebellion, where the Indian sepoys try and build a rebellion to throw off the British imperialists, and there's a lot of chaos and massacre going on both sides. You guys still good? All right. Now, India will be so important to the British that the Queen will end the reign of the East India Company and take direct control of India. One of the things going on is that Indians, even though many were educated in England, were not allowed to own their own businesses or achieve high-ranking positions in the army or in business. So you could be like a manager, but you couldn't be a district manager. You couldn't be a vice president. But India was so important that it was the cornerstone of England's economy. England planned their economy out of the riches they got from India. They called it the jewel and the crown of the British Empire. And they told people in India that they could only buy goods and sell goods to Great Britain. Now, some of the things taken: tea, indigo, cotton, and eventually becoming important, except if you lived in China, opium, poppies. And the British will rip things out of India and sell them on the world market. Eventually, when the Industrial Revolution hits, the British will have some positives. They will build an extensive railroad system linking the different provinces of India. Why it was done was simply to... Oops, give me a second. Don't like it. Yes, ma'am. Oh, if you could get her, that would be awesome. You sure? Okay. No, that would be fantastic. We had 5 minutes, so I got started. Thank you. Okay. All right. All right. Bye. All right. Now I know we can finish. I can slow down a little bit. Am I going too fast?
No.
I thought I had to get my daughter. So I was like, oh, I gotta go.
My counselors suggest.
All right. What do you guys need me to repeat? Anything?
No.
All right. You guys got time? You guys good?
I'm good.
All right. Here we go. Anyway, negatives. England holds all the economic power and they suppress India. One of the things that Indians did not like is that England was trying to reduce or belittle their traditional Indian culture. The Indians were like, look, man, we're a river valley civilization, for God's sake. What do you know? And because of over farming and pushing the agriculture to the brink, for several years there was massive famine. The British didn't care because what's the saying I told you guys? You can't see it from my house. So you're going to pay your taxes or your Lagan. Anybody have Mr. Stamp? Anybody watch the movie Lagan?
Yeah.
All right. You're going to pay your Lagan no matter. Well, he actually did a pretty good job every now and then. So that on film, Stamp. That was for you. All right. So anyway, all right. They just simply didn't care. And a lot of the missionaries that came in tried to destroy a lot of Hindu practices. They said, you've got to get rid of the caste system. The big thing they didn't like was the practice of the sati, where poor Jessica would have to throw herself on Alexander's funeral pyre so she could burn herself with her husband. Don't know why that was a good idea, but that's how they rolled back then, and that's their thing. And this causes different attitudes across the country. We're going to fast forward here, and it begins to build a sense of Indian nationalism. And the Indians, especially a guy named Shah Jahan, I say Shah Jahan, it's not Shah Jahan, he is the Indian leader. Ram Mohan Roy says, look, we've got to learn from the West. Let's learn science, let's learn technology, and let's use it to get rid of the British imperialists. Some of the things they're saying are good, like the railroad system and getting rid of the caste system. So Ram Mohan Roy is really the father of Indian nationalism, where Gandhi gets, all of the credit. The same thing about using Western technology to get rid of the West will take place in Japan, it will take place in China, and it will take place in the Ottoman Empire. And, well, I said Japan. Let's learn from them, and then let's shove them out. And so some Indians were divided in their thought process for the British. The British, as you guys remember me telling you, most of them didn't understand Indian culture. They looked down upon it. And there's the famous Thomas Macaulay quote, that one book written in English on the shelf in the poorest English schoolhouse is greater than the collected works of Sanskrit in the history of India. So, eventually, after World War II, India is going to have some problems. I'm going to pop down here. All right. The Indian National Congress is going to be that leader to try and get rid of everything, to learn from the British and get rid of them. One of the figureheads of the Indian National Congress is going to be the legendary figure Mahatma Gandhi. Now, as a young man, very similar to Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, he's going to be a little radical, and he's going to get thrown in prison. And it is there where he learns that the only way to do this is for peaceful, passive resistance. We're going to sit in, we're going to march, but we are going to do it peacefully. After World War II, there's going to be a lot of religious tension between Hindus and Muslims in India. Mahatma Gandhi is going to be assassinated. And when he is assassinated, everyone is able to put down the radicals. Both Hindu and Muslim said, wait a minute, that's out of line. Gandhi never hurt anybody. And the great saying was, a great light in the world has been put out. So there's this big controversy. What do we do with the increasing violence between Islam and Hinduism? Once again, our good friends in Great Britain decided that they were going to divide the subcontinent into two new countries. Muhammad al-Jinnah wanted a separate Islamic state that will be the modern-day country of Pakistan. It was going to be a homeland for Muslims. Modern-day India was going to be where the Hindus lived. The problem is, for thousands of years, the populations were intertwined. Max is Hindu, Nabil is Muslim, Cameron is Hindu, Ben is Muslim. So now we've got to pick up and move our stuff in two different areas. Well, why do I have to move? This has been my house for years. And as thousands of people were crossing into the border, a massive war breaks out. Instead, violence is rampant. And can I go to the next slide? Do you guys still need this?
So right now.
No, not at all. And it is Prime Minister Nehru who will talk about that a light of the world has gone out when Gandhi is assassinated. Is that?
I'm good.
All right. Are you good? All right. Now, I heard a beat.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, the British will finally be driven out. What's going on? Okay, we're still recording. All right, that's good. And India is going to adopt a model along the United States Constitution. They're going to have a strong federal government and small regional local governments, like the 50 states. After Gandhi is assassinated and the British leave, the Nehru family will pretty much be in charge of the government. They will bring stability up till the late 1980s. And India is going to become an economic superpower during this time as they work extremely hard to build a modern state on the ideas of social justice, which is interesting because for thousands of years they depended upon the caste system. It's very sad that in 1984, a woman who, women had not had a lot of rights and privileges in India for many years, becomes prime minister. She is assassinated, Indira Gandhi, by her own bodyguards. Her husband will become prime minister, and he is assassinated. So India, poor India, can't catch a break. But in this time from 1948 to 1991, India has achieved heavy industrial growth. They built a modern education system, doctors, lawyers, people very good in technology. And they will become a modern, massive economic superpower. The one problem that India has is being able to support their growing population. India, if it hasn't, I think it has, is about ready to overtake China as the most populated country in the world. And so in the late 70s and 80s, there began to be research in what is known as the Green Revolution, hybrid crops that can grow in virtually any location to make sure that people can eat. And that is India in 35 minutes. Any questions?
I think I have to go.
Then you have to go. All right, not a problem. You guys want to do religions later? Anybody want to keep going into Japan? Japan's much smaller. Anybody? You can do Japan? Okay. All right. Let's do Korea and Japan real fast. If you got to go, go. This is always open. You're free to come and go as you need to. I will cue this up. Korea, sitting off mainland China, is going to borrow a ton of ideas from the great Han Dynasty of China. And so, for a long time, Korea is seen as China's little brother. And their geographical area allows them to be a cultural bridge between Japan and China. The geography of Korea is extremely difficult. It is mountain and valley, very similar to ancient Greece. And right at the decline of the Roman Empire into the heyday of the Byzantine Empire and the Han Dynasty will be and the beginning of the European Dark Ages will be the three big kingdoms competing for power in Korea. The Koguro, the Pache, and the Silla. And these three kingdoms are going to give birth to three Korean dynasties that will reign, two for a very short time, one for an extremely long time. You guys ready for me to move? I'm sensing no. Now, what's going to happen is this purple kingdom right here is going to link up with the Japanese right here and start Japanese history. Japan is an archipelago, a series of disconnected islands.